The email hit my inbox at 6 a.m. I read it twice before I believed it. It was the agenda for Thursday's hospital sponsorship review meeting. Someone forwarded it to me by mistake. They didn't realize I was on the distribution list under my legal name, not my work name. Item 4 on the agenda read, Rebrand Proposal Whitfield Pediatric Wing to Bright Horizons Insurance Pediatric Center. My grandson's name is Whitfield. So was my other son's. I sat at my kitchen table and read it a third time, just to be sure I wasn't misreading it. Before I tell you what happened at that meeting, let me know in the comments where you're watching from tonight. If you've ever watched someone try to erase a name that meant everything to you, hit that like button. Subscribe to The Forgotten Father. We tell these stories for the quiet ones, the ones who built something real and never asked for credit. My name is Desmond Ruiz. I am 71 years old. For 26 years I've worked in the supply room at Ridgeline Memorial Hospital. I stock gauze. I track inventory. I know every shelf in that basement better than I know my own garage. People who see me pushing a cart of boxes assume that's the whole of what I do there. It never has been. 31 years ago, my son Whitfield was 8 years old. He came down with a fever that wouldn't break. 2 full days, climbing higher each time we checked. We brought him to the emergency room at Ridgeline. Back then, this hospital had no dedicated pediatric unit. He waited 4 hours in a hallway on a gurney meant for grown men. Trauma cases all around him. Doctors scrambling to find him a real bed. By the time they got him into proper care, the infection had already spread too far. He died 6 days later. He was 8 years old. I still remember the exact color of that hallway paint. A pale, indifferent green. The kind nobody chooses on purpose. I buried my son. Then I did the only thing that made real sense to a grieving father with a supply room paycheck. I got angry at the system instead of just angry at the world. I started asking questions. Why did this hospital have no separate pediatric emergency track? I learned the board had discussed building one for years. They never funded it. Always citing cost, always finding some other line item that mattered more that quarter. So I started saving every dollar I could set aside from my salary, 11 years straight, into an endowment fund. It wasn't a fortune on its own, but paired with a matching grant I spent 3 years lobbying a state health foundation to approve, it was enough. Enough to build a real pediatric wing. I named it after my son, the Whitfield Ruiz Pediatric Emergency Wing. I structured the endowment with naming rights locked to the family, in perpetuity. I did that so no future budget committee could quietly sell the name out from under him. The way this hospital once let him die in a hallway for lack of a bed. I filed all of it under my full legal name, Desmond Xavier Ruiz, with the Hospital Foundation's board. Almost nobody there connects that name to the man in the supply room they call Des. There was a night, about 6 months after Whitfield died, when I almost gave up on the whole idea. I remember sitting in my truck in the hospital parking lot, staring at that same pale green hallway through the emergency room doors. I'd just gotten another rejection letter from a state grant committee, the third one that year. I told myself it was foolish. One supply clerk thinking he could change how an entire hospital operated. My wife Rosa found me out there past midnight. She didn't say much. She just sat in the passenger seat with me for an hour. Before she got out, she said one thing I've never forgotten. You're not trying to bring him back. You're trying to make sure the next family gets to keep theirs. I went back inside and wrote the next grant application the following morning. My other son Perry was 2 years old when Whitfield died. He grew up mostly without memory of his brother. Just photographs and the stories his mother and I told him over the years. He became a hospital administrator, which felt for a long time like a strange kind of grace. My surviving son ended up working in the very building that held his brother's name on a wall. He climbed fast. 3 years ago he made senior director of operations. He calls the wing the Whitfield unit like everyone else does. I never once corrected him on what that word actually meant to me. I never told Perry the naming rights belonged to me. He knew the wing existed because of some family donation, in the vague way children absorb family history secondhand. He didn't know I was the trustee. He didn't know I still worked 2 floors below his office, stocking the very shelves that keep his hospital running every day. Thursday's meeting was in the 4th floor conference room, the one with the good coffee machine and the framed donor wall by the door. I've delivered supply orders to that room 100 times without anyone looking up from their laptops. This time I walked in during the morning break, ostensibly to refill the printer paper. I stayed in the back corner near the supply cabinet, where nobody thinks to notice the man in the gray polo. Perry stood at the head of the table, presenting a partnership proposal from Bright Horizons Insurance. They wanted naming rights to the pediatric wing. In exchange, a 5-year sponsorship deal worth $2 million. Perry called the current name a strong asset with outdated branding equity. He argued the hospital could modernize its image while securing badly needed operating funds. He said it like a man who'd rehearsed the pitch in a mirror the night before. Someone on the finance committee asked, almost offhand, whether the family that funded the original endowment had ever been consulted. Perry said, the naming rights are administered internally at this point. It's mostly a formality now. He genuinely believed that when he said it. He had no idea the family he meant was standing 8 feet behind him, refilling a paper tray. I set the tray down. I walked to the table. I had a folder with me, the same one I keep in a locked drawer in the supply room, right next to the inventory logs nobody else ever opens. Inside it was the original endowment charter, the perpetual naming rights clause, filed under my legal name 20 years ago. The naming rights aren't administered internally, I said. They're mine. I'm the trustee. The room went quiet the way rooms do when the wrong person turns out to be in it. Perry turned around, confused. Then his face did something I will never forget. He looked at the folder. He looked at me. Dad? He said, like the word didn't fit right in that particular room. Whitfield was your brother, I said. He died in a hallway in this building because there was nowhere real to put him. I spent 11 years and every spare dollar I had making sure that never happened to another kid here again. I named that wing after him because I refused to let this hospital forget what its shortcuts cost. That name isn't a branding asset. It's the only thing I have left of him. Perry didn't say anything for a long moment. The finance committee shifted in their seats. That particular discomfort of watching a private grief go public in a room built for spreadsheets. I didn't raise my voice. I never have needed to, not in 26 years pushing supply carts through that building. I just laid the charter on the table, open to the naming rights clause, and let it speak for itself. The committee tabled the sponsorship proposal that day. Not killed outright, just tabled, pending what the chair called further family consultation. I walked out without waiting for the rest of the vote. I had a supply order to finish before my shift ended. Perry found me in the basement 2 hours later. He'd never once, in 3 years as senior director, come down to the supply room before that day. He stood in the doorway a while before he said anything. "Why didn't you ever tell me it was you?" he asked. "Because you were 2 when he died," I said. "I didn't want you growing up in his shadow, feeling like you had to be some kind of living tribute to a brother you never got to know. I wanted you to just be Perry." "I almost sold his name for a sponsorship deal," he said. His voice had gone thin, almost boyish again. "You didn't know," I said. "That's on me for keeping it quiet this long, not just on you." We talked for a while down there, surrounded by boxes of gauze and IV tubing. Further than we'd talked in years. Maybe ever. I told him about the hallway, about the 4 hours we waited, about the exact moment the doctor came out, and I already knew from her face before she said a word. He'd never heard the full version before. His mother and I had always softened it for him growing up. We thought we were protecting him from something too heavy for a child to carry. Perry didn't fix anything overnight. But within a month he'd walked the sponsorship idea back entirely. He pitched the board something different instead. He proposed expanding the Whitfield wing with Bright Horizons funding as a straightforward grant. No rebranding attached anywhere in the paperwork. Along with a new fast-track triage protocol, designed so no child in that hospital ever waits 4 hours in an adult hallway again. He named the protocol after nothing. He didn't need his own name on it. He just wanted it built right, quietly, the way his father had always tried to do things. I still work the supply room. I still stock the same shelves I've stocked for 26 years. Most of the staff who pass me still just see the quiet man in the gray polo who keeps the gauze in order. That's fine by me. The wing still bears my son's name, still filed under my legal name as trustee, exactly the way I set it up 2 decades ago. Whitfield never got to grow up. He never got to see any of this. But every kid who comes through that pediatric wing now gets triaged within 20 minutes, not 4 hours. Because a father who lost one son refused to let it happen to anyone else's child. Rosa didn't live to see the sponsorship meeting either. She passed 6 years back. But she saw the wing get built. She saw her surviving son grow into a good man, mostly, even with the rough patches along the way. I didn't build that wing for a plaque. I built it because I couldn't build anything else that would bring him back. This was the closest thing to it I could manage with the tools I actually had. Some debts you don't pay once. You pay them every single day you're still standing to keep the shelves stocked, quietly, without needing anyone to notice you doing it. If tonight's story meant something to you, hit subscribe and stay with us here at The Forgotten Father. Tell me in the comments. If you found out someone was about to erase the name of a person you lost for a sponsorship check, would you have stayed quiet in the corner? Or set the folder down the way I did? I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for spending this evening with me. I'll see you in the next story.